Your girl Nkechi.
Welcome to Development Pillars. My name is Olanrewaju Osho. Today we are looking at the issue of the leadership question in development, or development and the leadership question. Since 1960, up till now, nearly 64 years, Nigeria is still groping in the darkness in our search and quest for development. So you hear Nigerians say the problem is leadership, the problem is leadership. And yes, the problem is leadership, because everything rises and flies with, or goes up or down with leadership. But if the same pool that we have been going to for over 60 years to pick leaders has not given us the kind of leaders that we are looking for, then we need to look at the pool and see whether it needs sanitization, purification, cleansing, so that we can, every time you dip a cup into the pool to bring out water, you have a chance of bringing out the good stock. Today, we will be tapping from the wealth of knowledge of Dr. Joseph Ibekwe, a leadership expert, who is the executive director of FLED Leadership Institute, one of the best leadership institute in Abuja. Dr. Joe, welcome to Development Pillars.
Thank you very much.
What do you think is wrong with us getting good leaders in Nigeria?
Nothing is wrong with us as a nation. Leadership is about people.
Leadership is about people.
It is the people that produce the kind of leaders that lead them. Leadership that emerges from a society is what the society has produced. And the society produces its own people through education. And the kind of education you give to your people is what those who emerge to become leaders eventually demonstrate or practice.
Or manifest.
So, as I said, leadership is people. Leadership is about people. Leadership begins with people. Leadership revolves around people. And leadership is all about people. And these people in this context, as I said, is about the education that the people have received. And the education has to be value-based education, principle-based education. It is the values, the principles that they have espoused through education,
yes,
that the people begin to practice, demonstrate the values they begin to espouse, as it were. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with us. The only thing wrong with us is that we don't have education. Now, I didn't say we don't go to school. I didn't say we don't have universities.
Yes.
I didn't say we don't have secondary school.
Yes.
But we don't have education.
Wow. So we don't have education. Is it because we lack the curriculum, or we don't have the right quality of tutors or teachers or instructors that can teach us this kind of education?
Thank you very much. As I was telling someone the other day that curriculum is the beginning and the end of what somebody becomes. When you go to school, someone designs a curriculum, design what he wants you to know. So when I say we don't have education, what I'm trying to say is that we don't have a curriculum that teaches us those values, those principles that we need to operationalize. The people that designed the curriculum that we use in our schools did not design in such a way that we can be thinking people, that will be value oriented, we are a people that have groomed to say anything goes. That's why you see our people, when they come, they behave anyhow, because anything can go, anything is possible. So we don't have the education that imparts in us specific clear values that tells us this is wrong, this is right. And if you do this is wrong, these are the consequences. And if you do what is wrong, these are the consequences. So because we don't have that kind of education, not only do we not have it, it is the little one that we have are not enforced. So when I say leadership is about people, it is about the education they have received.
Yes.
Is about the curriculum they have been used to acculturated.
Yes.
And this acculturation is what those people who now emerge from the majority of the people become what they call public space leaders. That is the life. That is their practice. That is what they begin to demonstrate. For instance, somebody that has his values about materialism, he draws his reference, he draws his importance, he draws his significance from what he has. And joy from what he has. If he has 10 cars, so he feels that it's important.
It's fulfilled.
So that is the education that he has. That's the value that he has. Now, the other person who does not think, who think that he is a human being because he's a human being, whether he has a car or he doesn't have a car, he is a human being because he's a human being. So because of that, that is the difference between us and those other people, those other societies, where the values are taught, espoused, demonstrated by their own culture. It is about curriculum.
And demanded for manifestation.
And demanded for manifestation. By the people. So leadership is about people. And people has to do with the education that they have, which they begin to practice. For instance, somebody goes to school and passes the exam by any means. So when he comes out, how do you expect him to live right? Because he believes that cheating
is a way of
life. If you want to pass exams, you must cheat. And the lecturer says that if you don't do this for me, you will not pass my course. That is acculturation.
Okay.
So when that person comes up from that environment and you give him public leadership position, so what he's going to think? If you don't give me this, you won't have this.
No moral, no value.
No morals, no value. So that is what we have in our environment. When I say we don't have education, that's actually what I'm talking about. I didn't say we don't have professors. I didn't say we don't have PhD holders. I'm not saying we don't have whatever. We don't have education that imparts values and principles of quality.
Purposeful education.
Purposeful education.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor. Let me ask you this question. We have heard of renowned men like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, and mostly the leaders of the First Republic. And people espouse them as great leaders, from Abat Macaulay all the way, to these great guys. Was it that the education they had then, at a point in time, got lost in the generation that followed? Or was it that they were just self-made men in leadership?
Well, if you take, except from Obafemi Awolowo, who, in early of his life, he studied alone, and before he had traveled. Most of this we see studied abroad. They acquire some value. Nnamdi Azikiwe studied in the U.S. Lincoln University. So this Herbert Macaulay also studied abroad. Now, these people received a form of acculturation that had value. They understood that they are human beings, and that public leadership is about public service.
Okay.
So they did not place their personal benefits above public interest. So they put public interest above their personal interest. Not that you don't have to have an interest. Yeah, you should have an interest. But a time comes, you realize that public interest is superior to private interest. So the generation that we have is a generation that puts private interest above public interest. And the reason is that they did not receive the education that tells them that you are in public service public leadership for public service.
And for public good.
Public good.
Yes.
So, as I said, it's a system of garbage in,
Garbage out.
garbage out. And you cannot give what you don't have. Even if you elect 20,000 legislators at the National Assembly tomorrow, because they pass through this system,
Yes.
where they have not imbibed, it is the internalization of this culture, is an internalization of these values.
Yes.
That someone had determined that I am going to do this, irrespective of what other people are doing, that is the person brings to public space and begin to practice it.
Okay.
That is the thing. We don't have what I call a critical mass of people. Not that we don't have people who have these values,
yes,
but they are not.
They are the minority.
They are the minority, and because the system we run is a system of majority takes the lead.
Yes.
So the voice of the minority is subsumed, is shut down, and sometimes you be discouraged. So what do you stand to gain? Because the majority are terribly bad. The majority are materialistically oriented. The majority, if you don't have a car, you're not regarded.
Yes.
Now, meanwhile, a car is a means of transportation. Taking you to where you need to go.
Yes.
The most important thing is that you got to where you need to go at the time you need to be there, do what you need to do, and go back to your house.
A boss can do it for you.
Yes, but here it is a status symbol. It's a status symbol. And what brings about status symbol is a product of low self-esteem.
Yes.
So those people that we have, sometimes if you talk about this, it's as if you're trying to insult those who are in public leadership. It's not actually, it's about selling what is.
Yeah, as it is.
As it is.
Yes.
So most of them feel that they are important because they have a retinue of vehicles following them. You know, they have a retinue, they must drive bulletproof cars. Why do you drive bulletproof cars? Because you have taken what belongs to the majority of the people and you are afraid that they will kill you.
They harm you.
If you have not taken what belongs to them, you will be free to drive around because you have not taken what belongs to them and they know it. So why you see these people, you know, do all this, because they know to themselves that what they are using, it's not what they worked for.
Yes, they didn't earn it.
They didn't earn it
through their sweat.
Through their sweat, through their competence, through their skills.
They allocated them to themselves.
Yes,
by the
they
reason
appropriated
of the
them to themselves by reason of the positions they occupy. And so when they have that, nature does not. Nature abhors vacuum.
Yes.
So inside of them, they know that this thing that they have, they didn't acquire it by legal means. And they are resources that belong to the people. And so they are afraid of the people because they have taken what belongs to the people. So how are they going to do it? They have to buy themselves bulletproof cars. They have to build houses and raise the walls so high.
Hold it, Doctor. Thank you very much. We'll continue after the break. Viewers, we still have Dr. Joseph Ibekwe, Executive Director, Fled Leadership Institute, Abuja, interacting with us on development pillars on the issue of the development and the leadership question. Very, very key, very key. We'll come back after the break and we'll continue in that same direction. Please, hold it down. Welcome back to Development Pillars. Today we are looking at the issue of development and the leadership question. And Dr. Joseph Ibekwe has been explaining to us the reason why we seem to be pulling out leadership that have not taken us to the promised land from the general pool, because we lack leadership education. We go to school, but we are not educated in the nuances of leadership. And that's why we have not had leaders that work for us the way they should. Doctor, we stopped at the issue of, how the people build a cocoon around themselves. But it was not always like that. I just want us to get something right. Yes, some of the first-class caliber of leaders we had with Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Dr. Obafemi Awolowo, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and so on and so forth. You know, they seem to be, they are not leaders that amass wealth. I was at Awolowo's house in Ekene. I was shocked. Just a bungalow with this name, huge name that the man died with, and Tafawa Balewa also, and they were not people that were just acquiring. At what point did we lose leadership focus on service to the people, and then we began to build a culture of leadership that focused on self instead of people?
It actually started from when the military came over to become public leaders.
Okay.
They began to have access to public resources, which they, by their grooming and training, they were not supposed to have access to those resources, and they didn't have the values to manage them.
Since they were trained to kill,
Yes,
to war,
yes,
to defend,
yes,
not to lead.
Yes, not to lead. So when they came into public leadership and they had access to public resources, they began to use it anyhow and for any purpose, acquiring them for themselves, living outlandish lifestyles, and then it began to become a norm.
So a culture was being born.
Yes, it began to become a norm. And so that norm of taking what belongs to the people and appropriating it to yourself by force, which is what the military did. They did by force because you cannot question them.
They have the gun.
They had a gun. They can decree today and undecree tomorrow. So they did that over a period and the masses, because they could not do it, they were watching them. And so a young officer will enter a military and suddenly become appointed into public leadership to serve.
Military administrator
Or whatever, and then began to have access.
Yes,
began to have access to public resources and enjoy life beyond what he or she had been trained to live. Was supposed to live a stoic life.
Yes.
Military people, that's all.
Puritan
Life.
Yes.
Now, so that culture began to evolve. So when the civilian people came, they continued from there. So I mean, just take what you can take. What you cannot take, share it. So it became a culture of taking and sharing. Taking and sharing. You know, somebody made a quote and said that when you see someone in public service, public leadership, who became stupendously rich, it must have been a product of fraud. Because public service is not a place where you make millionaires.
No.
Public service is where you create men and women of honor. Who live moderate life and they are satisfied with the fact that they are serving the public. But it's not so they can be poor in terms of not being able to pay their personal bills.
No.
They'll be able to pay their personal bills, but they are happy that, look, I can pay my bills, I take care of my bills, but I'm serving the public. Their joy, the joy of public service is that you are serving the public, helping to solve public problems. And you are happy that society is getting better. That's the joy of being in public service. But because of the incursion and the onset of a culture, that culture has continued to has become worse since the outset of the present civilian regime.
1999.
Check all those that we started this democracy in 1999. Go and check all of them. Check their background. Where we are there before 1999.
Yeah, and now
we are there now. How many industries have each of them established because of their private enterprise? They have taken from public resources, made themselves strong and mighty financially, built a bulwark around themselves, impregnable. So when you are even talking that you're hungry, they don't understand what you're talking about. So that is the culture that we have found ourselves in.
And when you are talking that you are not secure, they don't understand.
Yeah, when you say we are not secure, it's not, because they are driving bulletproof cars. And you know how much a bulletproof car is? Go and check it out. How many of them, from their earning, can afford it? It can only be through what?
Access to public fund.
So, as I said, when they do that, they themselves know that the resources that are at their disposal, which is at their discretion to use, if they are good people, they will use their discretion to serve the interest of the public. But because they have predisposed themselves to use public resources for private interest. So you see them using public resources for private interest. So that is where we are. So we need a new crop of leaders who first must internalize values of humanity.
And how do we do this?
It is through education.
Where do we start from?
You start from your house. It's difficult. You start from those who are pastors or imams, or begin to reorientate the people and tell them this is what humanity is all about. You're not a human being, or you're not a better human being because you have 20 cars or you have 20 houses, because you're not going to take any of them out of this place. Now, it's not that it's wrong to have those things, but the question is, what did you do to acquire them? Nothing wrong with you having 20 million cars, but the question is, what did you do? What productive activity did you engage in that enable you have access to those things? It is the unguarded consumerism, the unguarded consumer lifestyle of our leaders that has made it seem as if that you must have 15 cars in your garage for you to be seen as someone important. And when you're driving, a siren has to be blowing to show that you are coming. Excuse me. Well, that's where we are. And as I said, you need a first. The reason why this is that we have a set of people who have low self-esteem. That's the key. It begins with who you are. If you believe that you are important because, not you are important because you are a human being.
Yes.
If you think you're important more than the other person because of your position, then you've missed it completely. So you want to oppress the other person by whatever means to show them that you are somebody. You are not somebody. You don't have to tell somebody you're somebody. If you're somebody, it will be seen, it will be known. So,
thank you, Doctor. So, let's talk about FLED. So, what in this issue that we have discussed push you into wanting to give this education that is so lacking in the system?
Well, thank you very much. The thing is that, by the way, I'm a journalist by training. I trained Daily Times, was one of the Daily Times of old, not the Daily Times.
Old, yes.
Yes. So, and in the course of my travels, I began to see the deficiency of public leadership. And I saw the massive resource, massive potential of our nation. And that was in the early 1990s. And I began to interact with the high and mighty by the reason of my job, you know. And I see how leaders, even though they know what is right, are not doing it. They know what is right, but they're not doing it. And as they're not doing it, the system keeps, and I said, you cannot change a dried fish. You can't bend a dried fish. You break. So that was inspired us to start FLED. FLED is actually Foundation for Leadership and Education Development.
Yes.
Foundation for Leadership and Education Development. We began to take an educational approach to leadership development by setting up a system that teaches people what leadership is about, espousing the values, the principles. Leadership to us simply means two things: responsibility and influence.
Yes.
Responsible by knowing what you're supposed to do, doing something about it, and facing the consequence of the outcome.
Good or bad.
Good or bad. So Once you begin to teach people these things, they begin to understand it, and they say, oh, wow, this is it. And as they begin to imbibe it, they begin to have opportunity to practice them first from their own life,
Yes.
before they can bring it to the public space. As I said, you can't give what you don't have.
Okay, so will you recommend, Dr. Joseph Ibekwe, that this model of FLED, we don't wait till we get to adulthood before we get it? Can it be part of our education at the primary level, secondary level, and then so that this fish will not be dry?
We have advocated strongly over the years for the inclusion of leadership education as part of a systemic leadership system, putting leadership into our educational curriculum, making it compulsory for children to pass through leadership education, because it is key.
Very important.
If, like I said, if you don't bring someone because he's a professor to become a public leader, he doesn't understand it. He is professing very well in his area of academic training and expertise, and that's fine. But that does not qualify him to lead in the public space. And because our society does not have leadership institutions that are very strong in curriculum, like I said, curriculum is the beginning and the end of education. So if you think about leadership education, it means you have to take time to develop the curriculum. The content of that curriculum must have things it has to deliver, an expected outcome.
And you must also have leaders who teach what they live.
Yes.
Not what they just say.
Yes. So it is a long-term process. When you say advanced countries, they have these systems. It took time to build it. Now we need to begin to do that, adopt it, and it's not something you fly from the air. When you talk about Singapore, a president was there for over a long period of time.
And build a system.
Build a system, change the people's mentality, their way of life, their perspective, the value system, while he's building infrastructure. Now, our own leaders come here, they build infrastructure. You build infrastructure for a people that have no value, they go and destroy those same things they have built because they don't value it.
So leadership development is an holistic.
It's an holistic thing.
So we have to start from education, and then we have.
It has to be an educational approach.
Yes, and then we have to make sure that we are deliberate
about it.
We are intentional.
Absolutely.
We are focused.
Absolutely.
We are committed.
Absolutely.
And then we sustain it all the way until it becomes a culture that transforms the people's mindset, the system, and then brings development to the country.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful listening to you today. And we believe that there will be another opportunity for us to come and then look deeply at, the FLED curriculum and how we can espouse it to Nigerians to connect with.
Thank you very much.
You can connect with Dr. Ibekwe through the FLED website, and then you can learn more about how leadership interacts with development and how development cannot happen unless we have the right leaders who are development oriented. So this is Development Pillars, and again, my name is Olanrewaju Osho. It's been a pleasure doing with you today, and I look forward to seeing you next week when we bring another interesting topic for discussion. Please be a good Nigerian and start with the process of self-leadership. Begin to lead yourself properly, and then influence others also to develop the passion to become good leaders for themselves, for their society. And when we begin to do this all around, we are spreading the tentacle of good leadership in our country, and with time, we'll get it right. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening.